Alright, game number 5 of the World Chess Championship 2018, and it's once again the challenger Fabiano Caruana with the white piece against world champion Magnus Carlsen. The question was, would we once again see the famous Rossolimo Sicilian, which we've already seen in 2 white games of Caruana before? And the answer is yes. Once again we have the Sicilian, and once again 3 bishop b5, the Rossolimo Sicilian, but this time Caruana did not take on c6 as he did in games 1 and 3. Instead he played the other main move here, castle. So he was the first one to deviate and had prepared something new in this line. Bishop to g7, rook to e1. This is intending to grab some space here with e5, which black stops by going e5 himself. And in this position Caruana sacrificed a pawn by playing the move b4. The point of this pawn sacrifice is to develop quickly, develop the bishop to b2 and pressure pawn e5, as well as possibly open up in the center with d4. Black took on b4 with the knight, and actually Carlsen had this position before against Daniel Stellwagen a long time ago. So he was familiar with it. Actually both players, I believe, followed their preparation for quite a long time. Now bishop b2 was played, threatening the pawn on e5, and Carlsen responds by attacking one of white's pieces, the bishop on b5, and in turn Caruana responds by attacking the knight on b4. And now Carlsen took on b5. If the knight retreats, then white would take the knight and take on e5, regain the pawn, and he has a slightly better pawn structure, so this is a bit preferable for white. Carlsen took on b5, Caruana takes on b4, and the rooks swap off. Bishop takes a1. Now still this pawn is hanging, so black doesn't take on b4. He could do that, but this was not to Carlsen's liking, having a triple pawn here in the b file, and he plays d6 instead. B takes c5, and now you don't want to take back, because once again you would leave this pawn undefended, and Carlsen goes about developing his last minor piece, knight to e7. In this position Caruana made an interesting choice. He played the move queen e2, going after this b5 pawn. Instead he could also take on d6, and after queen takes d6 play d4, takes, bishop takes, and now it could go like this: castle, bishop takes g7, the queens come off, and we reach this endgame, which looks very drawish to me. The black pawn structure here is of course a little bit weakened, but it seems to me that white cannot really exploit that too much, and it's very close to equality. So I'm guessing that Caruana was aware of that line, but he wanted to try more, and he played queen to e2. This attacks the pawn on b5, and black goes b4. Now queen c4 was played in order to attack the pawn once again, and Carlsen responded with an interesting move. Queen c7 would be also completely fine, but queen a5 is already showing some ambitions and possibly some really good opening preparation. It's not clear to me, because Carlsen took some more time to play this move, but I would say it's not a move you play lightheartedly if you haven't looked at a position before. Now the queen attacks the pawn on c5 as well as the bishop, and white really only has one choice: c takes d6, counter-attacking the knight on e7. Now black has to go bishop e6. He cannot take any a1, that would be a disaster. After d takes e7, the bishop is attacked, the king is in the center, white has a pawn on e7. This is not looking good. So bishop e6, and now the queen does not really have a lot of good squares. It would like to stay in an active spot, but it's not possible. And so Caruana decides to offer the trade with queen c7. Queens have to be traded. White is threatening checkmate. So we reach this position. White is still up a pawn, but the pawn on c7 will be gone very soon. I know it's very close to being promoted, but it will not quite make it. Or you could promote it, but it would just not help you in any way. So black will regain this pawn, and in the meantime white will tried to develop this knight on b1, which is a little bit his problem piece in this position, as it cannot develop to his natural square here c3 as the pawn is controlling this. So this is what white needs to solve. First of all, though, it's black to move, and he goes knight c6, protecting the pawn on e5 and controlling the center. And here Caruana plays c3, which I think is a bit of an inaccuracy, and it's making his game more difficult. Instead, rook d1 was a very sensible move to prepare d4. Now black could play king d7, and white pushes d4. And here black has different options available, such as bishop g4 or b3. Let's just take a look at b3. b3 is an interesting move to trade off the pawns. Black's threatening to take, so white should do something like knight takes e5 check. If black now takes, white would retake with check. Black could take on e5, but he can also take the pawn on c7. Now white takes on b3. Black develops the rook with tempo, attacking the bishop. And after knight c3, black takes on b3. White is up a pawn right now, but black's pieces are active enough, and also some pieces, especially this bishop, is a little bit clumsy. A bishop would rather be on e3. So this seems to be about equal some play. So rook d1 was more precise and reaches a fairly balanced position. After c3, it's also within the realm of equality, but black has the easier play. King d7 was played once again. b3 would keep a passed pawn here on the b file, but after d4, white establishes a strong center, threatens d5, so this is not good news for black. So king d7 is the right move. Now c takes b4 and rook a8. The rook threatens the bishop, and here Caruana went into the tank. For 30 minutes he thought about his next move, and then he played bishop c3, which is a decent move for sure, protecting the pawn on b4. Carlsen took on c7, and Caruana played d3 to finally bring the knight into the game. And this was the next critical moment in the game. Here Carlsen played king b6, a logical move to approach the pawn on b4 with his king and activate the king. But it seems that more chances would be offered by playing b5. b5 fixes the pawn on b4, and black can now later on try to win this pawn. So for example, if now white plays like he did in the game of bishop d2, then black would be better. He could go rook d8, and after knight c3, black could take on d3, knight takes b5 check, king b6, knight c3, and now knight d4 is very unpleasant, as the rook on d3 is well placed, hitting all the three white minor pieces. So this would be clearly better for black. After b5, indeed the best move is king f1, and that already tells you something. King f1 is not an easy move to make. It is a logical move though, because black's king is fairly well placed, and white would also like to bring his king closer to the action. After king f1, black has different choices here. King b6 would be a move, rook a4 to go after this pawn. But it seems the position is still about balance. We also see the bar only slightly in black's favor here. So once again, this is nothing out of the ordinary, but I think it would have given black better practical chances to create something in this game. After king b6, Caruana played a good move, bishop d2, to develop the knight to c3, and Carlsen responded with rook d8. Bishop f8 was another move suggested by the commentators to go after this pawn. It would also not pose many problems for white. He has a lot of different moves, even a move such as b5, but I like bishop e3 check, knight c3 check, giving up the pawn in this manner and then saying, well, your king is active, but it's also a target for tactical operations. So here black would need to retreat, rook b1. White has organized himself, he should be fine. Carlsen tried rook d8, going after this pawn. And now Caruana played bishop e3, and this was some fine calculation here. He saw that this would pretty much force a draw, and he was correct. The king steps forward, now the knight develops to c3, king takes b4, attacking the knight. White goes knight to d5 with check. This knight has to be taken. Takes, attacking the knight on c6, so black takes once again, and now we see the point. Rook b1 check. There's no knight to be taken on c3 anymore. Black goes there anyway, and the rook activates itself by taking on b7 and threatens the pawn on f7. So this was the long operation that Caruana had foreseen by playing bishop e3, and he also had judged correctly that here he is in no trouble because his pieces are active enough. Carlsen went knight d8, defending the pawn and attacking the rook. Rook c7 check, king takes d3. Now black has won a pawn, but white is very well placed with his pieces, and also the king is rather in danger than it is an active, strong piece here. So the position is just equal. Now Caruana played another good move, king f1, taking away the e2 square. Here, black should not play e4. That would be a self-mate after knight e1. And indeed, if anybody has to be a bit careful here, it is black, because you have to avoid such mating nets. And Carlsen played a good move here, played h5 to stop any g4 from happening. Caruana created or supported g4 once more, played h3, but now Carlsen said, you know what, I'll just step back, you can win back the pawn on f7, but I get my king into safety, and this is what happens here. White wins back the pawn on f7, and we reach this position. It's 3 against 3, there's nothing to do, so Caruana played g4 and offered a draw, which was accepted in this position. Black could take on g4. Now he wouldn't take again on g4 because this would leave the bishop unprotected, but the king would just go to e6, and white plays rook a7 or something else. It's 2 against 2. There's nothing to do, and that rhymes, and that means it's a draw. All right, so we have 5 games, 5 draws, and this is what happens when the very best 2 players in the world play against each other. Not a lot of mistakes. This was a fine game by both players. It seems that Carlsen was a little bit better prepared after all, as he went into his endgame where he could press. But in the end, he missed maybe this one chance to put some more pressure by going b5. But even then, we're not talking about any big advantage here. We're just talking about a better practical chance. And after king b6, Caruana played flawlessly, defended well, and reached the draw without great hassle. So once again, Rossolimo variation was neutralized by Carlsen for the 3rd time now in a row. Caruana did not really get anywhere. Well, except for in game 3, he had a bit of an advantage, but in the end it seems it's always Carlsen who's pressing a bit. So this means we are at 2.5. Game number 6 is tomorrow on Friday. Then once again, it's Carlsen with the white pieces. And if you would like to be notified when I publish that analysis, and maybe a highlight video if there's going to be a win finally, then please follow the channel, subscribe, and then I'll see you again next time. Bye bye.